So the front shoulder is almost always the most damaged part because that's where people take their shots, as long as it's a good shot. So the first thing you want to do is start cleaning that up and get all the contusions and anything else out of the way that is damaged. So I try to keep the pieces as big as I possibly can. So you want to clean the front shoulder like Joe's doing. Try to get the fat off. I try to have a container that does dog food. Dogs don't want to eat the fat, but you want to make sure that you take anything that has any meat on it that is useful and put it to some kind of use. And the dogs usually will eat just about anything that has red meat on it. But if you look here, this whole unit is nice and clean. There's no contusions. It's a beautiful leg. Joe's dealing with the other side of it, which is damaged heavily. So that must have been the side that the shot was on. Cut around everything you possibly can, but you want to utilize as much of the meat as you can, but you have to be smart about what you're doing too.
Yeah, see, like a lot of this stuff, it's not really great meat anyways.
No.
Just
You
as
can
it
throw
is.
that out for the animals, though. Not your pets, but you can take that
But
out.
you can go to chicken.
Skunks and raccoons and stuff
And
will
chickens.
pick at it.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, chickens will love it.
So,
Just gonna put it up for now.
so this is a clean front shoulder.
Oh, yeah, see, that's
When you
where
look-
the shot was.
When you look at the top of the front shoulder, so here's the outside of the front shoulder, so this is the outside of the leg, and then you have the inside. What you do is take anything off that's going to be in the way. The front of the knee has a fat cap. That fat cap comes off and gets put aside to be picked over later. And then you have the top of the leg. Take a fillet knife. The median bone that runs along is at an angle away from the knee. So it's at a 40-degree angle, something like that. And what you do is you run along it on the inside, on the outside. Then you can rotate 90 degrees, push down, and rotate out. And then what you have is a nice clean cut on the inside of the carcass. And then cut straight down and out. Right? Take that. Cut that off. Deal with that after. Same thing on the other side. And then down and out. Out. Flip that over. Inside. Over. And what you're doing now is you're just filleting along the inside of that front shoulder. And then what you have is a nice clean bone. You can go back in and get the last little tidbits. That's it. So you have a nice clean bone right there. Now what you do is switch up. You got the back side of the leg in, other side in, other side in, in. Find where the bone runs along on the inside of the leg. Turn the knife, and what we're doing is we're rotating around. That's off. Front side. Same thing. Here. on the inside of the median part of the leg. If you flip it over, you can feel where the bone runs between the shoulder blade and the front leg. Run the knife along the bone. Walk along it and just scribe along the bone. Get a piece there. Take off any loose pieces that you have, and that's burger. And then what you end up with is a nice clean piece of meat, a nice clean bone with very little meat left on it. Maybe go back and pick over it. And that's it.
These front legs, really, a lot of it gets turned into burger and stew meat. There's not a lot to cut into steaks. For steaks, you need a big, sort of long, thick piece that you can cut good-sized steaks out of. So this stuff, all the stuff that he just cut off, a lot of it gets cubed up into stew meat, and then all these scraps that he's pulling off the bone here, the bites that he's talking about, that stuff can get thrown in and ground into burger.
Hind quarter. So once you're done quartering the animal, you're going to have a fat cap that rests on the knee. You take that off. There's nothing you can do with that. Alright, now if you look at the anatomy of the deer, and all I'm doing is just cutting the fat off of the animal right now. Everything is broken up into muscle groups. So if you cut along the seam and just look at the lines that are on here, it's like a road map of how to break it apart. So all you're doing is cutting along the muscle groups. Got it. You're just cutting along the muscle group.
Just present themselves to you.
Yeah, you got it. And anytime that you can hold on to fascia or muscle and keep walking along to take more of it with it, the better it is. So what you end up with is using your fingers to pull it apart, and then just walk along. And I'm just licking the meat so that I can pull it apart. I'm not cutting into any actual meat itself. I'm just walking along the line of the muscle group. And what you end up with is a nice little piece. So that right there, Joe's going to take. Now I take the leg, I turn it around, stick underneath, and pull some of that fat tissue off. And you want whatever it is that you're not going to eat. Okay. Now you have the tip, which is this piece that's out on the end. And I'm just going to carve around the edge of the knee and take that off. Now what I'm going to do is go along the bottom, along the knee, and this is important. So you feel the bone that runs along the top, and you go back into your axe murderer thing, and you're going to scribe along the bone and back to where you cut it. Now the shallower you can do this, the better the steaks are going to be that you have, because if you do deep cuts, you're going to end up with serration along the inside of that roast. So all I'm doing is scribing along the bone across. now you have two primal cuts. You're gonna take that part, cut it, and that's gonna be one piece. That's gonna be another piece. Now you've got the shank meat. You can see that the bone along here is solid, right? You're gonna take that and run along there, run up along the joint. And then you're just gonna fillet it off like you're doing a fish. Same thing on each knuckle. So if you treat each knuckle like it's an independent joint, you take it, run along. There you go. And you got a boned out joint. And that's it. So a nice little trick that's cut my time down is when you have the shank meat, which is either the forearm or the back leg, the shanks around the ankles, is you clean as much of it off as you can, and then you take it, you flip it over, put it down, and then you use a tail end to hold on to so you have some leverage. Down and along, and then run it just like you were filleting a fish. And then what you end up with is a nice piece of meat. You go back and you get the rest of it, and that turns into stew meat.
That stuff he just threw out, a lot of people will leave that and just throw it into the grind. So, you know, when we butcher ourselves, it takes us a lot longer than if you were to take it to a professional butcher, because they'll just take that shank meat and just throw the whole thing right into the grind. So if you take a little bit of time and you get rid of that stuff, that's what people taste when they say, I've had venison, it tastes too gamey for me. So that's what makes it gamey.
Yeah,
so
it's
if
all
you just,
that tough
it's
material.
all that tough material. So if you just take a little bit of time, get rid of it, it improves the quality of your meat
100%.
hundredfold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now you take that shank meat and you cut it into pieces like this across the way, and if you look, you can see that the fascia runs along here. That will break down and turn into jello, basically, and help your stew to thicken. And you can, instead of sitting there and picking it apart, you can take that and you can cut that into pieces, and now you've just cut down your time and effort, and you've increased the productivity of what you're doing to the point where it is nice and yummy. And that's that.
Just square, you know, you got to square it off. Obviously, you're not going to just want to eat that when you sit down for dinner. So, pick a point, and that could be, you could throw it in a burger grind if you like burger grind, or, you know, that's great for stew meat. So, you know, clean up as much of the garbage as you can off of it. And you can see how I mean, for lack of a better term, mushy the meat is. That's from aging. This deer has been aging for about 2 weeks. So the quality of the meat is much better. It's like butter. So by the time you cook it up, it makes a world of a difference hanging your deer if you have the opportunity to do it.
So this is what we call the football. So now what we end up doing is you take about a thumb size, you know, distance, cut, 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 cut. Take the end pieces that are, you know, not so savory, turn those into burger steaks, or burger stew steaks. Now we can take that and what you have is a nice steak. So there's a nice steak right there. Take that. And all we're doing is trimming. We're just trimming the meat so that, you know, it's clean. And if you look, if you have fascia on the meat and you want to get it off, best thing to do is to stick your knife tip underneath, go in, and then out, and use the meat against itself to pull that clean, and then it's dog food.
So now what you can do is you can keep this as a whole roast. Some people like to keep whole roast, but I think Brian agrees that they always tend to dry out because the meat is just so lean. So
Yeah.
personally, I don't like doing whole roasts. So I like to cut mine up into steaks. I go a little on the thicker side. I make these medallions that are about 1.5 inches or so thick. Go up there. And these are your steaks.